The morning sun cast long shadows across the front steps of Westlake High as a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. Inside, Dean took a deep breath, his hands tight around the worn straps of his backpack. His mom reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "You got this," she said, the dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion from the night shift at the hospital. "Just focus on your studies. Everything else will fall into place." Dean nodded but didn't speak. This was his third school in 2 years. He knew the drill by now. Keep your head down. Don't draw attention. Blend in. But blending in at Westlake would be nearly impossible. The school website had shown a sea of white faces, with barely any kids who looked like him. The main office smelled of copy paper and old coffee. The secretary barely looked up as she handed him his schedule. "Your homeroom is down the hall, room 114. Try not to be late on your first day." The hallway buzzed with morning energy, kids laughing at inside jokes, couples leaning against lockers, everyone moving with the confidence of belonging. Dean felt eyes tracking him as he moved through the crowd. This was nothing new. He was used to being the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit. Homeroom was a blur of announcements and curious stares. By lunchtime, Dean had successfully spoken to exactly 2 people, his homeroom teacher and a janitor who helped him find the bathroom. He sat alone at the far end of a cafeteria table, picking at a sandwich while writing in his notebook. The writing helped. It always had, ever since everything fell apart back home. "That's my seat." Dean looked up to see a tall boy standing over him, Letterman jacket stretched across broad shoulders, a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him stood 3 others, similar jackets, similar smiles. "Sorry," Dean said, already gathering his things. "Didn't know." "Well, now you do." The boy, clearly the leader, made a show of looking around. "Actually, the new kid table is over there, by the trash cans. More USB, I think." Laughter rippled through the group. Dean felt his face grow hot, but kept his expression neutral. React, and it gets worse. That was another lesson he'd learned the hard way. "My name's Tyler," the boy said, extending a hand like this was a business meeting. Dean hesitated, then shook it. Tyler's grip tightened painfully. "Just so we're clear on the rules around here. Some places are for certain people. Other places are for, well, others." Dean pulled his hand away, grabbed his notebook, and left without a word. Behind him, he heard one of Tyler's friends. "What's he writing in that book anyway? His feelings?" More laughter. Dean kept walking. The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. In chemistry, someone whispered "wrong classroom" when he walked in. In history, no one would partner with him for the assignment. In gym, his assigned locker was mysteriously broken. But there was one bright spot. His English literature teacher, Mrs. Patel, actually smiled when he handed in the first day questionnaire. She paused at his desk on her way past. "You like writing poetry?" she asked quietly, pointing to where he'd listed his interests. Dean nodded, surprised she'd noticed. "We have a talent showcase coming up in a few weeks. You should consider sharing your work." By the time the final bell rang, Dean had mapped the safest routes between classrooms and identified the least visible corner of the library. He'd also counted exactly 7 other black students in the entire school. None of them had approached him. Maybe they were afraid his outsider status would rub off on them. Outside, Tyler and his friends were gathered by the bike rack. One pointed in Dean's direction, and the group laughed again. Dean turned the other way, taking the long route to the bus stop. At home that night, his mom asked how the day went. "Fine," Dean said, forcing a smile. "Just fine." Later, in the safety of his bedroom, he opened his notebook and wrote until his hand cramped. The words poured out, his fear, his anger, his determination, but also the secrets, the real reason they'd moved so many times, the things he'd seen, the promises he'd made. Some truths were too dangerous to share, even in a diary, even with himself. He didn't know yet that his notebook would soon become the weapon that could destroy everything his family had sacrificed to protect. By the 3rd week, Dean had settled into a routine. Wake up early. Arrive at school before the crowds. Find the empty classroom where Mr. Wilson let him sit quietly before first period. Survive until lunch. Hide in the library instead of braving the cafeteria. Survive until the final bell. Take the long way to the bus stop to avoid Tyler and his crew. It wasn't much of a life, but it was manageable. Until it wasn't. The note was waiting in his locker on Monday morning. Folded notebook paper with 2 simple words, "Go home." Dean crumpled it and shoved it deep in his pocket. Just words. He'd faced worse. Tuesday brought another note, "Nobody wants you here." He ignored this one too. Wednesday was when things changed. Dean had just finished filling his lunch tray, chicken sandwich, apple, milk, when he felt someone bump his elbow. Hard. The tray tilted, then flipped completely, sending food flying across the floor. The cafeteria went quiet for a split second before erupting in laughter. "Oops," Tyler said, not even bothering to hide his smirk. Butterfingers. Dean stood there, milk dripping from his new shoes, face burning with humiliation. A lunch lady thrust a mop into his hands without a word. He cleaned up the mess while everyone watched. No one helped. No one spoke up. The gym teacher, Mr. Cooper, saw what happened next day when someone accidentally knocked Dean's clothes into the shower during gym class. The teacher just sighed and pointed him toward the lost and found box, a sad collection of mismatched items that smelled vaguely of mildew. "Just grab something that fits," Mr. Cooper said, already walking away. "And try to be more careful with your stuff." Dean changed into 2 small shorts and a stretched-out t-shirt with a faded Vacation Bible School logo. The other kids snickered as he joined them for basketball. When teams were picked, he was last, of course. When he missed a shot, someone muttered, "No surprise there." When he finally scored, silence. That afternoon, his English notebook disappeared from his desk when he went to sharpen his pencil. It showed up later in the trash can, several pages torn out. "What's wrong with you people?" Mrs. Patel demanded of the class, holding up the damaged book. No one answered. She kept Dean after class, her eyes soft with concern. "This isn't right," she said. "I can talk to the principal." "No." Dean cut in quickly. "Please, it'll just make things worse. You can't just let them." "I've handled worse." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Mrs. Patel studied his face. "At your old school?" Dean looked away. "Something like that." That night, his mom noticed his missing notebook. "I thought you wrote in that thing every day," she said, stirring a pot of mac and cheese on the stove, their 3rd night in a row of quick dinners between her shifts. "Lost it," Dean lied, pushing his food around his plate. His mom put down her spoon and sat across from him. What's really going on at that school? Her eyes, always so tired lately, now showed a flash of her old fire. "Nothing I can't handle," Dean said. "You promised you'd tell me if there was trouble." "It's not trouble, just normal new kid stuff." Another lie. "How was work?" She let him change the subject, but her gaze lingered on him longer than usual. The next morning, Tyler and his friends were waiting by Dean's locker. "We read you a little diary," Tyler said, voiced low enough that passing teachers wouldn't hear. Lots of feelings in there, lots of secrets. Dean's stomach dropped. His personal notebook, not the school one, had been in his backpack yesterday. The one with all his private thoughts. The one where he'd written about the nightmares, the memories, the reason they kept moving. "Don't know what you're talking about," Dean said, trying to keep his voice steady. One of Tyler's friends, a tall kid with glasses, pulled out his phone. "We made copies. Digital ones." He scrolled through photos of Dean's handwriting. "Who's the detective Lee you keep writing about? Your daddy?" The boy's voice took on a mocking tone. "So sad about what happened to him." Dean lunged for the phone, but Tyler stepped between them. "Careful now," Tyler said. "Would be a shame if these got around, or if they found their way to certain people." He smiled. "You know the ones." The bell rang. Tyler patted Dean's cheek, a gesture that looked friendly but felt like a slap. "Better hurry to class," Tyler said. "And remember, we're watching you now. Every move." As they walked away, Dean stood frozen, his hands shaking. They didn't understand what they'd found, what they were playing with. If those pages got out, it wouldn't just be his secret exposed. People could die. The school talent showcase poster hung in the main hallway, bright blue paper with bold letters announcing, "Show your skill. Share your talent." Dean walked past it every day, never giving it a second glance. That kind of attention was the last thing he needed. But Mrs. Patel had other ideas. I signed you up, she told him after class on Friday, her expression both excited and nervous, for the showcase next week. Dian stared at her. You what? I heard you reciting your poems to yourself in the library yesterday. They're good, Dian, really good. Her eyes shone with genuine enthusiasm. The school needs to see who you really are. I don't want them to see me at all, Dian muttered, but Mrs. Patel pretended not to hear. I'd already put your name down. 5 minutes on stage, that's all. She squeezed his shoulder. Sometimes the best way to stop being a target is to show your strength. Dian wanted to argue, to explain why this was a terrible idea, but Mrs. Patel looked so hopeful. And maybe, just maybe, she was right. If people saw him differently, as something more than just the new black kid, would things change? The weekend passed too quickly. Dian spent hours selecting which poems to read, practicing in front of his bathroom mirror, his voice shaky but growing stronger with each repetition. His mom watched him with a mixture of pride and worry. You sure about this? She asked Sunday night, leaning against his doorframe. No, Dian admitted, but I'm tired of hiding. Monday morning, Tyler cornered him before first period. Heard you're performing tomorrow, he said, his usual smirk in place. Break a leg. Literally. Dian pushed past him without responding. All day, he noticed whispers, glances, small groups of students falling silent when he walked by. Something was up. But he was committed now, no backing out. Tuesday evening arrived. The auditorium filled with students, parents, teachers. Backstage, Dian peeked through the curtain, his heart hammering. He spotted his mom sitting near the back, still in her hospital scrubs. She'd managed to switch shifts to be here. Mrs. Patel appeared beside him. You're going to be wonderful, she said. Just speak from your heart. 6 acts went before him, a rock band, cheerleaders, a magic show, 2 dance routines, and a surprisingly good stand-up comedian. Then the MC called his name. Next up, please welcome Dian Williams with an original poetry reading. Dian took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The lights were brighter than he expected, making it hard to see the audience. That helped somehow. He adjusted the microphone, hands trembling slightly, and began. This first poem is called Moving On, he said, voice barely audible even with the microphone. Someone in the audience coughed. Someone else whispered loudly. Dian cleared his throat and started again louder. This first poem is called Moving On. I wrote it after we left Chicago last year. He had just opened his mouth to recite the first line when the projector behind him flickered to life. There were gasps from the audience, then laughter. Confused, Dian turned around. His blood turned to ice. Projected on the screen, 20 feet tall, was a page from his private notebook. His handwriting, his deepest thoughts, magnified for everyone to see. It was an entry from 3 months ago about the nightmares about watching Detective Lee, his father, bleeding on their kitchen floor while men in police uniforms stood over him. The laughter died as people began to read. Horrified silence spread through the auditorium. Another slide appeared. This one contained the names. The names his father had told him, gasping through blood-filled lungs. The names Dian had memorized, then written down only once in code in his private notebook. Names that powerful people would kill to keep secret. Dian stood frozen, unable to move or speak. From the side of the stage, he could see Tyler and his friends huddled around a laptop connected to the projector, faces lit by the screen's glow. A third slide appeared. This one was a map, the crude drawing Dian had made of where his father had hidden the evidence that could bring down half the police department in their old city. Someone in the audience shouted. A teacher rushed toward the stage. Mrs. Patel was running down the aisle. His mother stood up, face white with shock. Dian finally broke free from his paralysis. He lunged toward the side of the stage, toward Tyler, but it was too late. The damage was done. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew. He changed direction, sprinting off the opposite side of the stage, pushing past a security guard, bursting through the exit door into the cool night air. Behind him, chaos erupted in the auditorium. Dian ran, tears blinding him, not caring where he was going. All he knew was that he couldn't go home, couldn't face his mother, couldn't stay in this town another minute, because the secret was out now, and they would be coming. The men who had killed his father would know exactly where to find him. unless he disappeared first. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal. Dean's mother sat clutching a foam cup of untouched coffee, her hospital scrubs wrinkled from hours of sitting. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice hoarse from answering the same questions over and over. No, he doesn't have other family in the area. No, he's never run away before. Yes, I've tried calling his phone. She looked up at Officer Brandt, who was taking notes with an expression that suggested this was routine. He's been missing for 12 hours now. Why aren't more people looking for him? Officer Brandt sighed. Ma'am, we've got a notice out to all patrols. But honestly, most teen runaways come back on their own within 48 hours. This isn't a runaway situation, she insisted, leaning forward. Something happened at that school. Something bad. The officer's radio crackled. He stepped away to answer it, leaving Dean's mother alone with her fear. She pulled out her phone again, dialed Dean's number, and listened to it ring until voicemail picked up. Again. Across town, Principal Reynolds was having the worst morning of his 20-year career. 3 sets of angry parents sat in his office, all talking at once. My son was just operating the projector. They were just having a bit of fun. How were they supposed to know what was in that notebook? Reynolds held up his hands. Please, one at a time. He turned to Tyler's father, a local business owner whose donations had built the school's new gym. Mr. Hoffman, your son and his friends accessed private property, made unauthorized copies, and deliberately humiliated a fellow student in front of the entire school. Boys will be boys, Mr. Hoffman said with a dismissive wave. Besides, shouldn't we be more concerned about what was in that notebook? Accusations against police officers, maps of evidence locations. Sounds like this Williams kid is mixed up in something illegal. The door burst open and Mrs. Patel stormed in, clutching a stack of papers. This is what your son did, she said, slapping the papers down on the principal's desk. They were printouts of Dean's notebook pages, all the slides that had been shown at the talent show, plus more. He didn't just embarrass Dean, he exposed a child who was in a protection program. The room went silent. What are you talking about? Reynolds asked. I've been on the phone all morning with Dean's previous school in Chicago. His father was Detective Lee Williams. He was murdered last year after uncovering corruption in his precinct. Dean witnessed it. Mrs. Patel's voice shook with anger. That's why they moved here, to start over, to be safe. And now, thanks to your sons, everyone knows exactly who he is and what he saw. Tyler's father paled. That can't be right. It is right, said a new voice from the doorway. A man in a dark suit showed a badge. FBI. We need to speak with Tyler Hoffman and his friends immediately. By noon, the story had spread through the entire school. Police cars lined the parking lot. Students were called in for questioning one by one. The hallways buzzed with whispers and rumors. I heard his dad was some kind of whistleblower. They were in witness protection. Tyler's totally getting expelled. At the edge of town, where the woods met the lake, a search party formed. Teachers, parents, and even some students gathered as a police officer gave instructions. They would spread out, check the hiking trails, the old boat dock, the abandoned ranger station. Remember, this is a missing 15-year-old who might be in danger, the officer emphasized. If you find him, do not approach alone. Call for backup immediately. Tyler stood at the back of the crowd, his face drawn and pale. His father had insisted he join the search, because show we care, to fix this mess you've made. The gravity of what he'd done was finally sinking in. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was something much worse. As the search party dispersed into the woods, Mrs. Patel found herself walking alongside Dean's mother. I never should have put him on that stage, the teacher said quietly. I thought it would help. You couldn't have known. Dean's mother replied, her eyes scanning the tree line desperately. Nobody knew. That was the point of moving here. They walked in silence for a while, following a muddy path deeper into the trees. He talked about you, Dean's mother said suddenly. Said you were the only teacher who saw him, really saw him. Mrs. Patel's eyes filled with tears. I saw his talent. I didn't see his pain. Near the lake, the local news crew had set up. The reporter stood with the water as her backdrop, her expression appropriately somber. Behind me, the search continues for 15-year-old Dean Williams, who disappeared last night following an incident at the Westlake High School talent show. Sources tell us Williams may have been the victim of targeted bullying. But in a shocking development, we've learned that the Williams family was possibly under federal protection following a high-profile murder case in Chicago last year. Police are not commenting on whether foul play is suspected in the teen's disappearance. As evening approached, the search party found something, Dean's notebook, or what was left of it, abandoned on the rocks near the lake's edge. Several pages had been torn out. Strange symbols were scrawled on the cover. The FBI agent sealed it in an evidence bag, his expression grim. "What does it mean?" Mrs. Patel asked, watching as the bag was carried away. "It means he's trying to tell us something," the agent replied. "The question is, what? And is he running from his classmates or from something much more dangerous?" The high school gym had been transformed into a command center. Folding tables lined the basketball court, covered with maps, photos, and stacks of papers. FBI agents in dark suits moved between stations, speaking in low, urgent voices. Local police officers looked out of place and uncomfortable, relegated to the sidelines of an investigation that had grown far beyond their usual scope. Agent Rivera stood at the center table, examining the pages from Dean's notebook spread out before her. 20 years with the Bureau had taught her to stay calm in any situation, but this case made her stomach knot with worry. Time was running out. "What exactly are we looking at here?" asked Chief Wallace of the local police, peering over her shoulder. Rivera pointed to a series of seemingly random numbers and letters scrawled across several pages. "This is a code Dean and his father developed. Detective Lee Williams taught his son how to record information safely in case anything ever happened to him." She looked up as the gym doors opened and Dean's mother walked in, escorted by another agent, which, unfortunately, it did. The chief lowered his voice. "So the rumors are true? The kid really witnessed his father's murder?" Rivera nodded grimly. 14 months ago, Detective Williams was investigating police corruption within Chicago's 32nd Precinct. He'd uncovered evidence linking several high-ranking officers to a drug trafficking operation. Before he could take his findings to Internal Affairs, 3 officers entered his home. She paused. They didn't know his son was there, hiding in the closet of the master bedroom. Dean saw everything. Across the gym, Tyler sat with his parents and a lawyer they'd hastily hired. The teenager looked shell-shocked, his usual confidence replaced by a hollow-eyed stare. Next to him, his mother dabbed at tears while his father argued in hushed tones with their attorney. Mrs. Patel approached Agent Rivera, clutching a stack of student papers. "I found these in my classroom files," the teacher said. "They're Dean's English assignments from the past month. I thought they might help." Rivera took the papers gratefully. Anything could be useful at this point. "Would you find him?" Mrs. Patel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're doing everything we can," Rivera replied. It wasn't really an answer, and they both knew it. At the evidence table, another agent called out, "I think I've got something." He held up a page from Dean's notebook, where a series of small drawings lined the margin, simple sketches that looked like random doodles to the untrained eye. "It's a map," he explained, pointing to features that suddenly became clear once he identified them. A curved line representing the lake, a square for the ranger station, X marks for trail crossings. And look here. He indicated a tiny cabin drawn in the corner, with a symbol beside it that looked like a key. Dean's mother gasped. "That's my brother's old hunting cabin. We haven't been there in years." Hope flickered across Agent Rivera's face. "Where exactly?" "About 20 miles north of here, deep in the national forest. It's barely standing these days." Rivera snapped into action, issuing orders to assemble a team. As agents hurried to prepare, the gym doors burst open again. A man in a rumpled suit flashed a Chicago Police Department badge. "Lieutenant Walsh," he announced. "I'm here about the Williams case." The room went silent. Agent Rivera stepped forward, blocking his path. "This is a federal investigation, Lieutenant. We didn't request CPD assistance." Walsh smiled tightly. "Just offering a professional courtesy. Detective Williams was one of our own after all." From across the room, Dean's mother looked up sharply, her face drained of color. "Get him out of here," she said, her voice shaking. That's him. That's one of them. He was there that night. Chaos erupted. Agents drew weapons. Local officers froze, unsure who to support. Walsh reached inside his jacket, not for a gun, but for his phone. He pressed a single button before agents tackled him to the ground. "He's sending a signal," Rivera shouted. "Lock down this building." But it was too late. The warning had been sent. Outside, in a black SUV with tinted windows, two men received Walsh's message. The driver started the engine. "They know about the cabin," he said to his partner. "We need to get there first." As the FBI scrambled to organize their raid, Tyler broke away from his parents and approached Dean's mother. Tears streamed down his face. "I didn't know," he said, his voice cracking. "I swear I didn't know what those pages meant. I just wanted to embarrass him." "I never thought." "That's the problem," she cut him off, eyes hard with anger and fear. "You never thought about him as a person, just as a target." She turned away. Now he might die because of it. The words hit Tyler like a physical blow. For the first time, he truly understood what he had done. This wasn't about school or popularity or power. This was about life and death. This was about a boy who had already lost his father to violence and might now share the same fate. All because Tyler had wanted to get a laugh at the new kid's expense. In the national forest, as darkness fell, Dean huddled in the corner of the dilapidated hunting cabin. The temperature was dropping rapidly. He had no food, no water, no phone. Only his wits and the lessons his father had taught him. Trust no one, his dad had told him repeatedly during those final weeks. If something happens to me, follow the protocol. Go to ground. Wait for the signal. But there had been no signal. Just months of running, hiding, pretending. And now, because of some stupid school bullies, everything had fallen apart again. Dean tensed as headlights swept across the cabin's dirty window. Vehicles approaching, multiple sets of headlights. Friend or foe, safety or death? He had seconds to decide. The interrogation room at the FBI's temporary headquarters felt smaller by the minute. Tyler sat hunched over the metal table, his parents and their lawyer banished to the waiting area outside. Across from him, Agent Rivera placed a cup of water within reach. "I've told you everything I know," Tyler said, voice hoarse from 3 hours of questioning. "We just wanted to mess with him at the talent show. We had no idea about his dad or the police or any of it." "But you read his notebook," Rivera said. Her tone wasn't accusing, just matter of fact. "You saw the names. The details about the murder." Tyler rubbed his eyes. "We thought he was making it up. Like writing some kind of crime story or something." He looked up, face etched with genuine remorse. Who would believe that stuff was real? Rivera studied him for a long moment. "I need you to think carefully. In all the pages you saw, was there any mention of a backup plan? A secondary location? Anything that might tell us where Dean would go if the cabin wasn't safe?" Tyler closed his eyes, trying to picture the notebook pages he'd scrolled through on his phone. There was something about a tree. A big oak with a hollow trunk. His dad showed him how to hide things there when he was little. He opened his eyes. "But I don't know where it is." Rivera slid a map across the table. "Point to where you think it might be. Best guess." Tyler's hand shook as he pointed to an area near the western shore of the lake. He wrote about fishing there with his dad. Before, you know. Rivera was already on her feet, calling to the agents outside. "Get a team to the west shore. Look for a large oak tree near the water." As she turned to leave, Tyler blurted out, "Can I help?" "Please. I need to make this right." Rivera paused at the door. "You've done enough damage, kid." "That's why I have to help fix it," Tyler insisted, standing up. "I know what to look for. I've seen all the pages. Please." For the first time, Rivera saw something in Tyler's eyes beyond fear and regret, determination, maybe even a flicker of courage. "Fine," she decided. "But you stay with me and you do exactly what I say." "Understood." Outside, the sky had darkened with storm clouds. Rain fell in heavy sheets, turning the forest paths to mud and reducing visibility to almost nothing. The perfect weather for hiding or for getting away with murder. 2 FBI vehicles pushed through the downpour toward the hunting cabin, lights off to avoid detection. In the lead SUV, Agent Rivera kept her eyes on the treacherous road while Tyler sat silently beside her, watching the wipers battle the relentless rain. "We're 5 minutes out," the driver reported. No sign of other vehicles. But as they rounded the next bend, headlights appeared through the trees ahead. A vehicle parked just off the road, partially hidden by undergrowth. "That's not one of ours," Rivera said, reaching for her radio. "All units, possible hostile presence near target location. Approach with caution." The SUV slowed to a crawl. Through the Rain Street windows, they could make out a dark sedan with Chicago plates. "They beat us here," Rivera muttered. Inside the cabin, Dean had made his decision the moment headlights swept across the window. Years of his father's training kicked in. Don't run blind. Assess first. Create an advantage. He slipped out the back window, dropping silently to the wet ground below. The rain was his friend now, muffling his movements as he crept around the side of the cabin. 2 men approached the front door, moving with the practiced efficiency of law enforcement, or former law enforcement. Dean recognized one of them, Officer Reese, his father's former partner, the man who had stood by and watched as his father bled out on their kitchen floor, the man who had promised to take care of the kid too, before Dean's mother returned home unexpectedly, scaring them off. The men entered the cabin, flashlights piercing the darkness within. Dean used their momentary distraction to slip further into the woods. He knew these trails now. He'd spent the past day memorizing every path, every hiding spot. The men would expect him to run as far and as fast as possible. Instead, he circled back. In the lead FBI vehicle, Rivera was giving orders. "Team 1, secure the sedan. Team 2, with me toward the cabin. Tyler, you stay." She turned to find the passenger seat empty, the door slightly ajar. "Damn it. Where's the kid?" Tyler hadn't planned to run off. He'd only meant to get a better look at the area, to see if he could spot the oak tree he'd mentioned. But once outside the vehicle, the enormity of the forest and the driving rain disoriented him. He'd taken a few steps toward what he thought was the lake shore, and suddenly the FBI vehicles were no longer visible behind him. Now he was stumbling through mud and underbrush, the rain soaking him to the skin. Above the storm, he heard voices shouting, orders being given, teams deploying. Then, a different sound, branches breaking nearby, someone running. Tyler froze, heart pounding. "Hello," he called out, barely audible above the rain. A figure emerged from behind a thick pine tree, soaked, muddy, but unmistakable. "Dean," Tyler gasped. The 2 boys stared at each other, enemies turned unlikely companions in a deadly game. For a moment, neither spoke. What could possibly be said? "I'm sorry I exposed your secret and put your life in danger" seemed woefully inadequate. Dean broke the silence. "What are you doing out here?" "Looking for you," Tyler admitted, "with the FBI. They're back that way, I think." He gestured vaguely behind him. "And the men from Chicago?" "The ones who killed my dad." "At the cabin?" "2 of them." Dean nodded, processing this information. There should be a third. There were 3 that night. As if summoned by his words, a beam of light cut through the trees nearby. A gruff voice called out, "I heard something over here." Both boys instinctively dropped to the ground. "That's not FBI," Tyler whispered. Dean shook his head. "It's Walsh, Lieutenant Walsh. He was in charge that night." His voice hardened. "He gave the order to kill my dad." The flashlight beam swept closer. "We need to move," Dean whispered, already beginning to crawl backward. "I know where to go." Tyler hesitated only a moment before following. This boy he had tormented for weeks was now his best hope for survival. The irony wasn't lost on him. They moved silently through the underbrush, using the rain and darkness as cover. Dean led them on a winding path that seemed random to Tyler, but clearly followed some plan. After what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, they reached the shoreline of the lake. And there it was, an enormous oak tree, its trunk wide enough that both boys could have hidden behind it. "This is it," Dean said, running his hands along the bark until he found what he was looking for. A section that seemed solid, but was actually a carefully disguised door into the hollow trunk. "What's in there?" Tyler asked. Dean pulled the hidden door open. The truth. Everything my dad collected. Names, dates, account numbers, photos. He reached inside and withdrew a waterproof bag. "The evidence that will bring them all down." A voice rang out behind them. "That's quite enough." Both boys turned to find Lieutenant Walsh standing 20 feet away, gun aimed directly at them. His uniform was gone, replaced by civilian clothes, but his authority and his danger remained. "I've been looking for that evidence for 14 months, Walsh said, taking a step closer. "Hand it over, son, and maybe we can all walk away from this." Tyler moved instinctively, placing himself between Walsh and Dean. "He's lying," Tyler said, his voice surprisingly steady. "He killed your dad. He'll kill us too." Walsh sighed. "Brave but stupid kid. Last chance. The bag. Now." Behind them, the lake water lapped at the shore. Above them, the rain continued to fall. And all around them, the forest held its breath, waiting to see who would survive the night. Time seemed to slow as Lieutenant Walsh's finger tightened on the trigger. The rain pounded around them, but to Dean, it sounded distant, muffled. All he could focus on was Tyler, the same boy who had tormented him for weeks, now standing between him and a bullet. "Last warning," Walsh growled, taking another step forward. "Give me the evidence." Tyler didn't move. His shoulders were trembling, but his feet remained planted firmly in the mud. "I'm not letting you hurt him," he said, voice cracking. Walsh laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Look at you, plain hero. Where was this courage when you were shoving him into lockers? When you were projecting his private thoughts for the whole school to laugh at?" The words hit Tyler like physical blows, but still he didn't step aside. "You don't get it, do you?" Walsh continued, rain dripping from his face. "This isn't about you kids. This is about $15 million in drug money. This is about cops who crossed a line and can't go back." His eyes hardened. "This is about survival." Behind Tyler, Dean was frantically searching the waterproof bag. His father had always told him there would be protection inside, but all he could find were papers, a small flash drive, and an old cell phone that probably didn't even work anymore. "Time's up," Walsh said, raising the gun higher. A sudden shout cut through the rain. "FBI! Drop your weapon!" Agent Rivera emerged from the trees, her gun trained on Walsh. Two more agents appeared behind her, fanning out to cover different angles. But Walsh didn't lower his gun. Instead, he moved with practiced speed, grabbing Tyler and pulling him close as a human shield. "Back off," he shouted to Rivera. "I'll kill the kid." Tyler struggled against Walsh's grip, but the man was too strong. Dean watched in horror, clutching the evidence bag to his chest. This was his fault. All of it. If he'd never written those names down, if he'd been more careful with his notebook. Rivera's voice was steady, professional. "Lieutenant Walsh, you're surrounded. There's no way out of these woods except in handcuffs or a body bag. Your choice." "There's always a third option," Walsh replied, backing up slowly toward the lake, dragging Tyler with him. "You let me take a boat across to the highway. The kid comes with me until I'm safe. Then I'll let him go." "Don't do it," Tyler shouted. "He's lying." "He'll." Walsh's arm tightened around his throat, cutting off his words. Dean looked down at the old cell phone in his hand. His father had said it would protect him. What had he meant? On impulse, he pressed the power button. To his surprise, the screen lit up. It had been kept charged all this time. But it wasn't an ordinary phone. There were no apps, no keypad, just a single red button on the screen labeled Emergency. Without hesitating, Dean pressed it. Immediately, a loud, high-pitched sound emitted from the phone. Everyone flinched, and Walsh's grip on Tyler loosened just enough for the boy to twist free. Tyler dove to the ground as Rivera shouted, "Take cover." What happened next seemed almost like magic to the two teenagers. Within seconds, the woods around them filled with agents, far more than had been there before. They seemed to materialize from the trees, the bushes, the shoreline. Walsh found himself surrounded by a dozen weapons. "Lieutenant Patrick Walsh," a new voice announced. A tall woman in a dark raincoat stepped forward. "U.S. Marshal Kendricks, we've been waiting a long time to meet you." Walsh lowered his gun, his face a mask of disbelief. "How?" "That phone," Marshal Kendricks explained, nodding toward the device in Dean's hand, "has been pinging its location to us every 6 hours for the past 14 months. Silent mode. We knew where the evidence was all along. We were just waiting for the right person to come looking for it." "A trap," Walsh whispered. "Detective Lee Williams was smarter than you gave him credit for. Kendrick said as agents moved in to handcuff Walsh. He knew he might not survive bringing you down, so he made sure his son could finish the job. 2 hours later, in the warmth and safety of the FBI command center, Dean sat wrapped in a blanket, his mother's arms around him. Across the room, Tyler sat with his parents, all three of them looking shell-shocked. Agent Rivera approached with 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate. "The other 2 have been apprehended," she told Dean. Reese confessed immediately, hoping for a deal. "He's given us names of everyone involved in the drug operation." "So it's really over?" Dean's mother asked, her voice small with disbelief. "The Chicago part is," Rivera confirmed. "Your husband's case will finally get justice." Dean looked across the room at Tyler, who was staring down at his hands. "What happens to them?" he asked, nodding toward the boy who had bullied him, then saved him. Rivera followed his gaze. "That's partly up to you. The school board is pushing for expulsion. There will be disciplinary hearings, possibly juvenile charges for theft and harassment." Dean was quiet for a long moment. "He stood between me and a gun," he finally said. "Yes," Rivera agreed. "He did. That counts for something." 6 months later, Westlake High School looked different. Posters covered the walls announcing a new anti-bullying initiative. In the main hallway, a memorial plaque honored Detective Lee Williams, whose evidence had led to the conviction of 12 corrupt officers and the dismantling of one of Chicago's largest drug operations. In the cafeteria, Dean no longer sat alone. Friends surrounded him, real friends who knew his story and respected his journey. At a nearby table, Tyler ate with a quieter group than his old crowd of bullies. The 2 boys weren't friends, some wounds cut too deep for that, but they acknowledged each other with nods when they passed in the hallway. Mrs. Patel's classroom had become a safe space for students to share their writing, their thoughts, their fears. The poetry club she'd started, with Dean as its first president, had 30 members and counting. After class one day, Tyler lingered behind. "I never really apologized," he said when everyone else had left. "Not properly." Dean looked up from gathering his books. "You didn't need to. You showed it." Still, Tyler insisted. "I'm sorry, not just for the talent show, for everything before it, for not seeing you as," he struggled to find the words, "as a person, with a story, with pain, with courage." Dean nodded slowly. "We've all got stories. That's what my dad used to say." "Your dad sounds like he was pretty amazing." "He was." Dean shouldered his backpack. "The memorial service is next week. You should come." Tyler looked surprised. "Really?" "Yeah. My mom would like to thank you properly for what you did in the woods." As they walked out together, neither boy noticed Mrs. Patel watching from her desk, quiet tears in her eyes. This was how healing began, not with grand gestures, but with small moments of human connection. With seeing each other, truly seeing each other, perhaps for the first time. Outside, the spring sun warmed their faces. Life would never be the same for either of them. But maybe, just maybe, it could be better. Harder, more complicated, but filled with the kind of truth that sets people free.